no reserves left. Finish them. Five lives left. You have my respect, Hunter.
2 for 1.
One opponent stands. That was inconceivable.
Whew.
You obliterated the enemy.
Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. Hey Guardians, hope everyone's doing well today. This is another one of those videos that is really just meant to be more informative than anything else. I'm feeling a little bit burnt out on Destiny right now, mainly just because of the awful state that PvP is in, coupled with the fact that there isn't really anything interesting to do in PvE right now. But I wanted to revisit Rose, considering the range changes that we got last season, as well as, the few shakeups that we've had inside of the meta to see if Rose is still worth grinding comp for. Now, when I first reviewed Rose all the way back in, I think it was Season of Defiance, I gave Rose a very positive review. I even said it might be my new favorite Legendary 140 at the time. Fast forward, I want to say 9 months to now, and Rose is very much my favorite Legendary 140 without question, like it's not even a close contest. But just because I like something doesn't necessarily mean it's the best option or a particularly strong choice, it just means that I like it. So let's talk about Rose. First off, there are a few things you have to realize if you are deciding to use a 140 hand cannon, and this goes for any 140 hand cannon really. First off, as far as hand cannons go, your most competitive option is without question the 120 hand cannon archetype. In particular, of course, Igneous Hammer. It is by far the best 120 in the game currently. What I've started telling people as far as hand cannon archetypes go is 140s when you want to have fun, 120s when you want to sweat, and 180s when you want to feel bad about yourself. The main reason you will still see a lot of players still maining 140 hand cannons is for a couple of reasons. Either A, it's the archetype that they're the most comfortable with, they have the most trigger time with, or B, they just like 140s because they're fun. The big thing to keep in mind with 140s is that as opposed to 120s, where you can play a bit more passively because 120s have a lot of range and they flinch very heavily, 140s require you to be very mobile, typically more on the aggressive side because 140s really are mid-range brawlers. They do not have the range of a 120, they will not flinch an opponent as heavily as a 120, and they do not have the shot placement forgiveness that a 120 has. To get the ideal TTK on a 140, you have to hit 3 crits. On a 120, you can hit 2 crits and 1 body. That may not sound like a big difference, but it does make a huge difference. The main 140s that are going to be worth using that have something that can keep up with 120s are typically going to be exotic hand cannons. These would be weapons such as Ace of Spades with Memento Mori, which in my opinion is the best damage perk in the game. It's not on a timer, and while it's active, you can get away with 1 crit and 2 body on Ace. Plus, Ace always has its radar up regardless of whether or not you're using your sights. Next up, I would say is Thorn, specifically with the Catalyst. This is mainly due to the refined Soul Devourer, which gives you bonus mobility, bonus stability, and bonus handling. Soul Devourer as a damage perk is definitely not as strong as it used to be. This is mainly due to resilience gating. In order for Thorn to get the 2-tap like it used to be able to, you have to be fighting a Guardian with very low resilience, which really just doesn't happen that often anymore. Lastly, I would say Hawkmoon, mainly because of Paracausal Shot. Paracausal Shot is something of a mini-game, but people who are good with Hawkmoon are absolutely terrifying to play against. Hawkmoon in the hands of someone who knows how to take full advantage of Paracausal Shot and has the accuracy to do so is one of the most lethal weapons in the game and one of the most frustrating to fight against. And that's the big thing about 140s in the current sandbox. They really have to be something special in order to make them worth considering over something like a 120. And even then, you do still have to keep in mind that when compared to 120s, you are very much undergunned. Now, Rose does have some things that does set it apart from other 140s that do make it worth considering. For one thing, there's the perk pool, which, take a look at it. This perk pool is crazy. This is probably the best perk pool you're going to get on a 140 hand cannon. And the second reason, and this is the big reason that I love Rose is a lightweight archetype weapon. This means it will have better handling just in general, as well as it makes you move faster and gives you a passive plus 20 bonus to your mobility as long as you have the weapon out. This is really good on any class because, quite frankly, moving fast just feels better than not moving fast, but it's particularly valuable on hunters because with that passive plus 20, you can drop your mobility down as far as 80, potentially even 70, and put those stats into something that is just more useful in the current sandbox, such as resilience or maybe discipline, something like that. With thorns still everywhere, generally speaking, I think the best way to go is 8 mobility, 6 resilience to make sure you cannot get 2-tapped by Thorn, 10 recovery, and then ideally high discipline. Rose allows you to do that. Rose is pretty much married to my hunter. When I'm using Rose, it's almost always on my hunter because of that bonus to your mobility. But again, the mobility bonus is not going to be bad or a negative on any class. Moving faster always feels better than moving slower. Now, as far as the roles that I'm really looking for go, the first one would be small bore with accurized rounds, slide shot, opening shot, smooth grip with a range masterwork. You can see what it does to the stats here, and that's a very good stat spread as a whole. Yes, your stability is a little on the lower side, but on hand cannons, stability isn't as important unless you're on a controller. And even then, 50 plus mobility is kind of the sweet spot for hand cannons. As long as you're above that point, you're going to be fine, even if you're on a controller. Now, opening shot, I mainly have for the boost to aim assist. Yes, the bonus to range and all that is nice, but keep in mind that range bonus only lasts for your first shot. Slide shot, similarly, will typically only last for one shot, so on slide shot, I'm really not using this as much for the bonus to range and stability. I'm mainly using it for the reload. When you slide shot will partially refill your magazine. Now, I do think that slide shot is somewhat overrated on 140 hand cannons. I think it's very good on 120s because 120s typically have very low magazine capacity, but 140s typically don't have that issue. So I do think slide shot is a little overrated, but if you're someone who is very mobile, very aggressive, then slide shot just feels really good. And I am someone who likes to play that way as often as I can. So slide shot I think is still a good choice on a 140 if you're using it for the reload purpose. The next role would be pretty well the same thing, just with explosive payload. Now, I'm not a fan of explosive payload, I want to make that clear. This game already has so much flinch that it is seriously out of bounds, I would say, on pretty much any weapon. And perks that increase flinch, such as payload and that sort of thing, really need to have a rework of some sort. But there's one big reason that I like having explosive payload, and that is for bows. Bows, I think, are probably the most annoying weapon to fight in this game. They're some of the most powerful weapons in the game. They basically give you sniper rifle utility. You have no range fall off, and you can 2-tap at any range. And they're also a primary weapon, so they have infinite ammo as well, which can make them very frustrating to fight. One soft counter, and I do want to emphasize soft counter, this is not a hard counter to bows, but is flinching them off of their shot. And explosive payload increases your flinch a ton, and I do find that very useful in fighting bows for the most part. Again, soft counter, not a hard counter. Now, the next role I would be looking for would be Hammerforged Rifling, still accurized rounds, Perpetual Motion, and Opening Shot, again with a range masterwork and smooth grip. Perpetual Motion is something of a slept-on perk in my opinion, especially if you are a hunter main such as myself. Hunters are basically required to be pretty mobile basically all the time just because they're just generally a very squishy class. And their abilities, minus really cringy shit such as, threadling spam or invis spam, that sort of thing. Outside of that, hunter abilities are fairly weak when compared to the other classes. So if you're a hunter, you're probably on the move a lot just to make sure that you're not giving your enemies too much of an opportunity to shoot at you. And Perpetual Motion fits that playstyle pretty much perfectly. And Perpetual Motion is a perk that has the ability to turn pretty much any weapon into something of a stat monster. So you can see where the stats are at right now: 73 range, 50 stability, 65 handling, 1 stack of Perpetual Motion, 60 stability, 75 handling, and 65 reload speed, which is also nice just in general on hand cannons, 2 stacks, 70 stability, 85 handling, 75 reload speed. That is a crazy stat spread. Now, the downside, of course, to Perpetual Motion is you do have to be on the move for this perk to proc. The good news is that it's very easy to keep it procced. Even if you're in a gunfight and you have to take cover, you can sit behind that cover and just, make very slight movements from side to side, or even just, run or walk into the wall that you're standing behind, and Perpetual Motion will stay procced. So this is one of my favorite rolls. Another thing to consider is if you really wanted to bring your range up, which currently you are at 33 meters of range with this roll, you could put on full bore, because Perpetual Motion will offset the downsides of full bore enough that the hand cannon is still perfectly usable. And that will bring your range up to 34.5 meters. Whether 34.5 meters is really that much better than 33.8 meters is up to you. Personally, for me, it really isn't, so I would stick with Hammerforged. The next roll I would be looking for is, again, pretty much the same thing, just with explosive payload for the same reasons I mentioned before. Now, some other rolls that I'm looking for that I think have potential to be really good, meaning I don't know for sure if they'll be as good as those other rolls, but I think they could be, would be to start, your barrel is going to be small bore, magazine will still be accurized, masterwork will still be ranged. These three really won't change, and I will mention if they do. But moving on to the other combos, first off, moving target with opening shot, just because, Rose already has very good aim assist at 85 at base. Moving target when you're aiming down sights will bring it up to 85, opening shot will bring it up to 100. If you want to make sure it's constantly maxed out, you could put a targeting mod on your helmet or something, or on the weapon, but it probably isn't necessary. So this is a role that I would be interested in, mainly because this is an aim assist monster. And aim assist is still important on a mouse and keyboard. Some people think it isn't. It is, trust me. If you don't think it is, go ahead and get yourself an Exalted Truth with Slick Draw and Gut Shot, go use it for a while, and then come back and try to tell me that aim assist doesn't matter. Next up, again, Elemental Capacitor. As far as the perks in the fourth column goes, really this is kind of dealer's choice. I would still go with opening shot or payload. But Elemental Capacitor offers a ton of bonuses depending on the subclass. On Rose, I would be looking for either A, Stasis for the boost to strafe speed, just because having a higher strafe speed is very helpful in duels, or potentially Arc for the boost to handling. This would be especially good on Arc Titan for obvious reasons. But with Elemental Capacitor, even Void would be good for the boost to your stability, or potentially Strand if you're someone who goes airborne a lot, since Elemental Capacitor will boost your AE on Strand. Really, the only one that I'm not a huge fan of on Elemental Capacitor is Solar, because all that really does is increase your reload speed. And while reload speed is still important, especially on hand cannons, I still don't look at it with the same degree of value as the other boosts you can get from the other subclasses. The next thing I would be looking for would be Quick Draw with Snapshot for just a very fast, snappy weapon. These two perks combined are fantastic. I wish to God that Igneous Hammer, the current one, still had this combo. It used to, it does not anymore, and it makes me very sad, because weapons with Quick Draw and Snapshot feel phenomenal just because they are so damn fast. And because you have two very good handling perks here, if you're someone who has enough faith in their accuracy, you could go with full bore, which will hurt your stability, but that will bring your range up to 78. So I don't personally think I would recommend full bore, but it is still something I would say that is worth considering. But for me personally, I would still stick with Hammerforged or potentially small bore. The next one I'm looking for would be Rapid Hit with Eye of the Storm, mainly just for a dueling monster. Rapid Hit and Eye of the Storm are both perks that are mostly good in one-on-one duels. Both of these perks by themselves are very good. Granted, Rapid Hit I do think is way more useful on a pulse rifle than on a hand cannon. If you look at the bonuses that Rapid Hit gives you, this is again assuming you are landing 3 crits to get the perfect TTK on this 140. The first one will bring your stability and reload speed up a little bit. The second one will bring it up quite a bit more. And that's about the only time you're going to notice it, because most of the time with a hand cannon, by the time you hit that third shot, the gunfight's already going to be over. Rapid hit also only lasts around, I think, 1.5 to 2 seconds, so it's not guaranteed that you're going to be taking it into your next gunfight. In fact, the chances are very low unless you happen to be taking on more than one opponent at once, which I wouldn't typically recommend on most hand cannons unless you're really juicing it up with a damage perk of some sort. The last combo that I'm looking for would be, again, pretty much the same exact combo that I mentioned before, either perpetual motion or slide shot, hammer forged rifling or small bore, ranged masterwork, accurized rounds, and then Vorpal. Now, Vorpal doesn't really offer as many benefits as some of the other perks here, but it might be okay to have as sort of a last-ditch weapon in the event you have to fight a roaming super of some sort. Granted, the supers that Vorpal weapon is going to be useful against are fairly limited. Against something like Golden Gun or the Stasis Warlock super that I can't remember the name of, you can pretty much forget it because they are almost certainly going to kill you before you're able to actually take enough advantage of Vorpal to kill them. But it might be good against something like Spectral Blades, Fists of Havoc, Blade Fury, the Strand Hunter super that I also can't remember the name of. I apologize, I'm terrible with names, but this is probably the other role that I would be looking for just as something to experiment with as a last-ditch weapon to fight a super. So those are the roles that I'm really hunting. Let me show you some of my favorite Rose loadouts as well as what is currently the best Rose that I have. So a quick note here, I kind of ended up deciding against doing a loadouts section of the video just because it would make it go way longer than I want. But if you want me to do a video at some point about the loadouts I like to use, then let me know in the comments. Keep in mind, most of my loadouts are just based around making my weapons more consistent because I do actually prefer to use my weapons in my first-person shooters, imagine that. So they aren't really crazy ability loadouts or anything like that, but if you want to see a loadout video based around Rose or just some of my favorite loadouts in general, let me know in the comments. But because I have a feeling y'all will want to see it, this is the best Rose that I've gotten so far. It's almost perfect. It really just needed a ranged masterwork here. Combat grip isn't bad either. I definitely would have preferred smooth grip, but combat grip and heavy grip are both pretty decent options. But again, smooth grip is really the grip that I'm always going to be looking for on my Rose rolls. So that's all for me tonight, Guardians. I'll leave some brief Rose gameplay at the end here. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please do me a favor. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you're looking for on Rose, as well as your thoughts on the weapon. Do me a favor, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe with the bell icon. It really does help me out. But for now, I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.
Claim Zone A. Zone B lost. What can stop you if you fight together? Nothing. Down. Don't come. This is their fate.
Jesus Christ. Fighting like a one-man war over here.
What can stop you if you fight together? Nothing. You captured Zone B. You have the power. Down. Zone C lost. Zone C captured. You have the power.
Hey. Can't push that with that in silence and squall there. how to make sure they don't get beat. Whew, okay.
This is it. You continue to be my greatest success.
Of course. Okay, nice. Rose is still the GOAT.